one of the most important things about developing apps is the teamwork element of it. To understand that kind of framework where you're working, but what the moving pieces are, who's involved in what. There's the front end piece that we call the graphical user interface, and that's where there's a lot of the artistic work, the layout, the design, the graphics works. And some of that begins, on a whiteboard or pencil and paper, brainstorming with the rest of the team in terms of what do we want it to look like, how do we want it to behave, and then that gets translated into sort of a technology component where you take those sketches, those drawings, those layouts, and you start modeling them on software. We call programming languages, and they're all part of creating what you see on the screen. But those languages are a lot different. Working with those languages are a lot different than working with designing the actual user interface. So that's the first level of real interface, is the people designing the user interface, aesthetically, graphically, have to then work with the people who are implementing the user interface in terms of the logic and what do the buttons do. But the next piece really of coding is, once you've told the application what you want to do in terms of interfacing with the user interface, and the client side scripting, as we call it, or the programming, implements those things, there's what we call the back end or the server side. That is, the data and the information ultimately has to go over the network somehow, maybe come back. On the far end, it means that it has to talk to a server, and there's a set of server programming languages. So we call that the server side programming. The client side programming with the graphical user interface, and then the server side programming, which is done on a computer somewhere, not on your tablet itself. It could be done in a local router, it could be done in a server far across the internet, and that's yet another whole different group of programming languages. So the languages that you use to program the client side that's behind the user interface is not necessarily the same as the programming language that you use to program the server side. That's really sort of the three major pieces, is the user interface, the user sees, the client side scripting or programming behind the user interface, and then the server side programming that allows you to really interact with whatever's happening on the network, whether it's the server or some far